Well, well, well. Look who's still standing. Here's to the ones they couldn't break, the souls they couldn't buy, the minds they tried to bury under doubt, fear, and shame. Hello to you, the one who kept going. Because something's been happening behind the scenes. Something you weren't supposed to notice. Something they never wanted you to find out. But I see it now. And once you hear this, you'll never look at your life the same way again. You have friends you've never met, allies you can't see, protectors who move in silence and operate from positions of power you don't even know exist. They've been watching over you this entire time. And no, I'm not talking about fantasies or bedtime stories. I'm talking about real people in real positions with real influence. People who saw something in you that terrified those trying to destroy you. They saw your potential before you did. They recognized your frequency when you were still trying to fit in with people who wanted you small, without your knowledge or permission. They made a decision to shield you from attacks you never even saw coming. You thought you survived on your own, didn't you? You thought it was your strength alone that carried you through hell. But here's the truth that'll shake you to your core. Every time someone plotted against you in a boardroom, someone higher was countering it. Every time someone tried to sabotage your path, an invisible hand redirected the damage. Every time you felt alone, outnumbered, drowning in opposition, you weren't. You had shadows moving on your behalf, making calls you'll never hear, sending emails you'll never read, blocking attacks with a precision that looked like luck but was actually warfare. They didn't protect you because you begged them to. They did it because you represent something they believe in. The ones who tried to destroy you made one critical mistake. They assumed you were alone. They thought your silence meant weakness. Your humility meant you had no weapons. Your isolation meant you had no value. But the ones in high places saw it differently. They saw your discipline when others saw fragility, your patience when others saw defeat, your refusal to fight dirty when others mocked your restraint. And instead of calling it naive, they called it rare. And rarity gets protected. Power recognizes power even when it's still forming, even when it's wrapped in pain and doubt. You want to know why every trap set for you malfunctioned? Why every lie told about you eventually collapsed under its own weight? Why those who came for you ended up destroying themselves instead? That wasn't karma working slowly, that was intervention working strategically. You've been walking through a battlefield where bullets were redirected mid-air, where landmines deactivated seconds before you stepped on them, where enemies who thought they had you cornered suddenly found themselves surrounded instead. You survive because you were meant to, not by accident, but by design. And once you start to see the pattern, you'll realize you've been blind to the most important part of your story. There are people in positions you don't even think about, people whose names don't trend, whose faces never appear in photos, who move through systems like ghosts with authority. They sit in rooms where decisions about your industry are made. They read reports about rising threats and emerging talent, and you've been on their radar all along. They have access to information that would make your head spin. And at some point your name crossed their desk. Maybe it was something you wrote that got forwarded up the chain. Maybe it was a conversation someone had about you that reached the wrong ears, or in your case, the right ones. Maybe it was the way you handled a crisis that made someone with real power pause and think, this one's different. Whatever it was, you triggered something. Not suspicion, but recognition. And once they recognized you, they started watching, not to harm you, but to protect you from the ones who would. Because they knew what you didn't, that you were carrying something dangerous, something the system fears. You think those opportunities that appeared out of nowhere were random? That person who vouched for you when you had no credibility? That door that opened just when everything else was falling apart? That wasn't luck or cosmic generosity. That was someone making a call, someone pulling strings, someone saying, "Leave that one alone. They're under watch." The beautiful irony is that while you were fighting visible enemies, exhausting yourself against people who hated you publicly, Your real protection was unfolding quietly behind closed doors through encrypted messages and strategic moves you'll never know about. They've been running interference for you, deflecting attacks before they reached you, neutralizing threats while you slept. Every time you woke up feeling like you dodged a bullet, you did. But it wasn't luck or instinct. It was precision. They've been studying the people who study you, tracking the ones who track you, building files on everyone who ever tried to tear you down. And when those people crossed the line, pushed too hard, went too far, your protectors acted not with violence but with power. A word in the right ear, a file dropped on the right desk, a reminder that some people are off limits. You ever wonder why certain enemies suddenly went quiet? Why people obsessed with ruining you abruptly lost interest? Why attacks that should have ended you fizzled into nothing? It's because someone intervened, someone you've never met, never thanked, never even knew existed. And they don't need your gratitude. They're not doing this for recognition. They're doing it because they see the bigger picture. You're a piece they can't afford to lose. You're not just surviving anymore. You're being cultivated, protected like an investment, because that's exactly what you are to them. And now it's time to talk about what they're protecting you from, because this is where things start to get dark. The opposition you face isn't just random haters or jealous colleagues. There are people who genuinely want to see you fail. Not because you wrong them, but because your very existence threatens their control. You represent something they can't manipulate, a frequency they can't tune, a narrative they can't script. And when systems encounter what they can't control, their instinct is to eliminate it. But here's the problem. You have guardians now, and those guardians have zero tolerance for the games being played against you. Every email sent to discredit you has been read and archived. Every meeting held to discuss your removal has been recorded and documented. Every whisper campaign aimed at poisoning your name has been traced back to its source. Your allies in high places aren't just watching you, they're watching everyone watching you. And they're building a case not for court, but for consequence. Because the way power really works, it doesn't need trials, evidence, or public exposure. It only needs leverage. And your protectors have been collecting leverage on your enemies like currency. One day, when the timing is right, that currency will be spent. Think it sounds paranoid, too strategic to be real? Then explain why people who came for you hard suddenly backed off. Why companies that blacklisted you reversed their stance without warning. Why individuals who swore to ruin you ended up ruining themselves, not by your hand but by forces they couldn't identify. That's not luck. That's not karma. That's calculated protection. Someone decided you were worth defending. And when people with real power make that decision, the entire battlefield changes. Enemies don't just lose, they disappear. Threats don't just fade. They're neutralized before they even form. And here's what terrifies those still trying to hurt you. They can't figure out who your protectors are. They don't know where the interference comes from. They launch attacks, and those attacks disintegrate midair. They set traps, and the traps backfire. They try to isolate you, and somehow you end up more connected. It's driving them insane because they're fighting an enemy they can't see, an opponent they can't name, a force that plays by rules they've never learned. Your allies don't announce themselves. They don't sign their work. They just act. And by the time anyone realizes what happened, it's already done. So when you lie awake at night wondering how you made it this far, why you're still standing when so many wanted you buried, understand this. You didn't survive on strength alone. You survived because people in places of power decided your story wasn't over. They saw something in you worth defending, worth protecting, worth investing in. You're walking through a war zone where bullets curve away, where bombs diffuse themselves, where enemies destroy their own plans. You're not lucky. You're protected. And that protection terrifies anyone foolish enough to keep coming for you. But let's be real, this isn't a fairy tale. Protection this deep, this strategic, this absolute comes with a price. These people aren't shielding you out of love or charity. They're doing it because they see value, potential, purpose. They see someone who can influence outcomes, shift paradigms, change systems. That means you carry responsibility. Now, whether you realize it or not, you're not just being saved. You're being shaped. You're not merely being defended. You're being prepared for something far beyond your own survival. Think about it. For someone with real power to risk their reputation, protecting a person they've never met, the calculation has to run deep. They're strategizing, planning, investing in what you could become. They don't move on emotion. They move on vision. And their vision involves you. Powerful enough, aware enough, influential enough to matter in ways you can't yet see. You're not their charity case. You're their investment in the future. You're a weapon still being forged, a creation of heat, pressure, and purpose. And they're guarding the forge while you're still in the fire. Every betrayal you endured wasn't meant to break you. It was designed to sharpen you. Every loss didn't signify weakness. It refined your instincts, taught you patience, strategy, and restraint. Every lonely night, every period of isolation wasn't punishment. It was construction. You were being dismantled, examined, and reforged piece by piece into something unshakable. None of it was random. You were being refined under constant observation, tested without your consent, measured by unseen eyes that wanted to know if you were worth the effort it would take to protect you. Every time you chose integrity when you could have chosen vengeance. Every time you stayed disciplined instead of impulsive. Every time you held your tongue instead of performing for attention. You passed exams you didn't know existed. You earned your shield not by asking for it, but by proving through every hardship that you were worth guarding. Now you can finally understand why certain doors opened when logic said they shouldn't. Why strangers appeared at the exact moment you needed guidance. Why opportunities surfaced precisely when everything seemed lost. That wasn't luck or divine coincidence. That was coordination. Deliberate, precise coordination. While you were crawling through ashes, they were rearranging the board, removing traps, and laying stepping stones through your wreckage. They couldn't take your pain away. Pain was part of your rebirth. But they made sure it didn't destroy you. They allowed the fire to forge you, not consume you. And when you finally rose from it, what awaited you wasn't ruin. It was a kingdom. The people who tried to break you turned you into something indestructible. The ones who betrayed you taught you to see beyond loyalty and read intention. The ones who mocked you trained you to stop seeking validation. Every lie told about you became proof of your impact. Every attempt to silence you turned into free advertising for your message. Every hand that tried to hold you down gave you leverage to rise higher. What they meant for harm became the blueprint for your evolution. Your protectors saw that arc, the transformation that suffering was sculpting, and they understood what you were becoming long before you did. They knew that anyone who could endure what you endured and stay standing wasn't just meant to survive. They were meant to become a force. So they made a decision. You would live long enough to become what destiny already declared, and soon, maybe even now, you'll feel it click. That moment when every event, every betrayal, every closed door suddenly aligns into a pattern that makes perfect sense. You'll see the invisible hands that caught you mid-fall. You'll recognize how protection disguised itself as coincidence. You'll realize that every time you felt alone, you were actually surrounded by presence, by strategy, by unseen allegiance. And when that realization hits, everything changes. Because once you know you're protected, you stop living like prey. You start walking like someone who knows an invisible army stands at their back. Your enemies will sense that before they can explain it. They'll feel it in your silence, in your calm, in the way you no longer chase explanations or validation. You're not desperate anymore. You're deliberate. You don't justify your presence. You embody it. You don't flinch when challenged. You watch. You don't argue with noise. You outlast it. That quiet confidence terrifies people who only understand power through fear. You've stopped reacting because you know forces greater than you are already moving pieces into place. You've seen enough near misses turn into narrow escapes, enough sudden redirections that saved you at the last second to know that nothing about your survival was random. You've stopped fearing exposure, rejection, and sabotage, not because you think you're untouchable, but because you've learned that your life has a security detail the world can't perceive. You've walked through traps that didn't trigger. You've been surrounded by enemies whose plans collapsed before they reached you. You've been targeted by forces bigger than you. And yet here you are, stronger, clearer, calmer. That's not luck. That's proof. And now you're dangerous in a way you've never been before. You're not dangerous because you fight. You're dangerous because you don't have to. You're dangerous because you've mastered restraint. Because you move through chaos with quiet assurance. Because you've stopped playing defense and started moving like someone who already won. You're dangerous because peace radiates from you. And nothing rattles people more than someone they can't provoke. You speak truth without trembling because you know you're not speaking alone. You stand by yourself without feeling lonely because you've learned that solitude isn't emptiness. It's preparation. You were never abandoned. You were being guarded. While you rebuilt, they reinforced the perimeter. While you doubted, they maintained the plan. While you cried, they cleared the next path forward. You were being protected while you grew strong enough not to need protection anymore. The people who laughed at your confidence, who called you delusional for believing in a future that didn't yet exist, are watching it unfold now, piece by piece, proof by proof. They're watching you thrive in environments designed to suffocate you. They're watching doors swing open that they swore were locked. They're watching your persistence pay off in ways they can't rationalize, and it's eating them alive because now they realize what you always knew. You weren't talking to them when you spoke your destiny out loud. You weren't seeking their belief. You were communicating with the ones already ensuring your words became reality. Every declaration was a transmission, and the right receivers were always listening. That's the true gift your protectors gave you. It isn't wealth, though it will come. It isn't fame, though recognition will follow. It's positioning, being placed exactly where you need to be, when you need to be there. It's timing, doors opening not when you wanted, but when you were ready. It's credibility, the kind that can't be fabricated because it's earned through fire and proof. They've given you insulation from destruction and access to opportunity. They've given you the power of patience and the safety of precision. You've become the weapon they were guarding all along, sharp, steady, and strategic. You've become the living proof that divine timing isn't slow, it's surgical. And now, as you step into this next phase, understand something clearly. You're not being saved anymore. You're being activated. The protection that once surrounded you from the outside now moves through you. You are no longer the one being guarded. You are the guardian. You are the storm that systems can't predict, the force that enemies can't map, the frequency that cannot be controlled. And this time, you're not just surviving the fire. You are becoming it. It's not even safety they've given you, though you've been shielded from blows that would have shattered lesser people. What they've granted you is something far rarer, more powerful, and infinitely more dangerous. Time. Not the ordinary kind that passes unnoticed, but sacred time. Unbought, unhurried, and uncorrupted. Time to evolve into who you were meant to become before the world could crush the potential out of you. Time to construct a foundation so deep that no betrayal could shake it. Time to absorb every lesson, not under pressure, but with precision. In a world addicted to speed, where everyone is pushed to compete, to chase, to perform before they're ready, time is the greatest luxury imaginable. It's what no one else gets, and yet somehow you did. Time to heal without distraction, time to study the patterns of your own life, time to learn the language of your instincts, time to stop reacting and start designing, time to rebuild your mind from chaos into strategy, time to become unfuckable with a fortress in human form. And while you were being gifted that time, your enemies were being gifted something else entirely. Rope, long rope, enough to wrap around their own ambitions and choke themselves with it. They thought they were operating unchecked, laughing at your stillness, mistaking your silence for defeat. They kept coming, kept scheming, kept dragging your name into their shallow battles. They thought the absence of retaliation meant you were weak. They didn't realize your restraint was being documented. Your discipline was being measured, and their arrogance was being recorded. Every whisper they uttered in private, logged. Every strategy session held against you, monitored. Every alliance built on lies, infiltrated. While they thought they were circling you, they were actually being studied. Every move, every message, every betrayal noted and stored like evidence in a vault. Your protectors weren't just defending you, they were archiving truth line by line, frame by frame. They were building a record of corruption, deception, and overreach so airtight that one day it could collapse entire structures, not out of vengeance, but out of inevitability. Because here's the reality your enemies never understood. Real power doesn't need to scream. It doesn't threaten. It doesn't rush. And it certainly doesn't warn. Real power waits. It allows people to destroy themselves publicly while remaining invisible behind the curtain. And your allies, those invisible guardians, are patient beyond comprehension. They understand that premature retaliation spoils the art of precision. So they let time work like acid, slowly dissolving the lies built around your name.